President Thomas Jefferson commissioned the Lewis and Clark expedition from 1804 to 1806 to investigate the territory obtained through the Louisiana Purchase. Additionally, in 1806, Zebulon Pike, a military officer and explorer, spearheaded a subsequent expedition to survey the southern regions of the Louisiana Purchase. While Lewis and Clark often dominate educational materials, Pike played a significant role in aiding the nation's expansion by mapping out the newly acquired lands. Zebulon Montgomery Pike, born on January 5, 1779 in New Jersey to Isabella Brown Pike and Zebulon Pike, was raised in a military family. His father, also named Zebulon, enlisted in the military at the onset of the Revolutionary War in 1775, aiding the young nation in its struggle against the British. After the war, the elder Pike continued his military service, leading the family to various military posts in the wilderness of Ohio and Illinois. Growing up in these frontier outposts, young Zebulon Jr. became accustomed to exploring the rugged Midwest. At the age of 15, he followed in his father's footsteps by joining the U.S. military, a decision that attracted little attention at the time. By the time he turned 20, he had already achieved the rank of first lieutenant, establishing a solid reputation for himself. According to Jared Orsi's book, Citizen Explorer: The Life of Zebulon Pike, from a young age, Pike aligned his interests with those of the nation. Orsi states that as a driven young individual, he adopted the dominant cultural ideals that prioritized self-discipline, civic duty, and a modest approach to seeking personal recognition. Zebulon Pike was a direct descendant of Robert Pike, who, in 1692, served as assistant to the General Court in Massachusetts. Robert Pike was responsible for collecting testimonies from both accusers and the accused in criminal cases. In his capacity, he conducted numerous testimonies for women accused of witchcraft during the Salem witch trials. Robert Pike vehemently opposed the use of spectral evidence in these trials, making him one of the earliest figures in authority to condemn the Salem court's handling of the witchcraft accusations. In another notable development, Pike married his cousin, Clarissa Harlow Pike, in 1801. Despite having 5 children, tragically, 4 of them passed away in their youth. Their only surviving child, Clarissa Brown Pike, went on to marry John Cleves Sims Harrison, who was the son of President William Henry Harrison. In 1805, Zebulon Pike was commissioned by the United States government to undertake an exploration of the upper Mississippi River and identify its source. His mission encompassed surveying the area, documenting its geographical features, fostering positive relations with the Native American communities dwelling there. Pike guided a group of 20 men on a journey spanning about 2,000 miles from St. Louis, Missouri, to the northern regions of present-day Minnesota. Upon his team's return, Pike declared that the Mississippi River originated at Leech Lake, a finding celebrated as groundbreaking. However, Pike's assertion was incorrect. Lake Itasca actually serves as the true headwater of the Mississippi. Zebulon Pike's successful exploration of the upper Mississippi River earned him another expedition opportunity in 1806. Given the limited knowledge about the newly acquired Louisiana Purchase territory, Pike was assigned the duty of guiding a contingent of soldiers into the southern territories to locate the origin of the Arkansas River, an important tributary of the Mississippi. As Charles Cerami noted in Jefferson's Great Gamble, the remarkable story of Jefferson, Napoleon, and the men behind the Louisiana Purchase, President Jefferson pondered, which pathways were viable along the other rivers he knew of, the Arkansas, Missouri, and Red Rivers. Much of the continent's interior remained shrouded in mystery, with questions lingering about its dimensions and form. Venturing into present-day Colorado, Pike and his team encountered a striking mountain in the distance. However, with winter looming, they prioritized their safety, erecting a sturdy fort to shield them from the severe weather and potential Native American threats. They settled in. Yet the allure of the mountain beckoned Pike. Determined to explore it, Pike and a small band of men departed from the safety of the fort, aiming to ascend to the summit. Despite facing treacherously cold conditions and navigating waist-deep snow, they pressed on. However, their progress was halted, and they were forced to retreat well before reaching the peak. Upon his return, Pike described the mountain and concluded it was impassable. Once again, Pike's assessment proved incorrect. In 1820, Edwin James, part of Stephen Harriman Long's Long expedition, reached the summit. Long initially named it James Peak in honor of this achievement. However, over time, the mountain came to be known as Pikes Peak after Zebulon Pike. In 1890, the U.S. Board on Geographic Names officially designated the mountain as Pikes Peak, eliminating the apostrophe for simplicity. Today, Pikes Peak stands as the highest peak in the southern Front Range of the Rocky Mountains, forever bearing the name of a man who never ascended it. In the spring of 1807, Zebulon Pike guided his expedition from Colorado southward towards the New Mexico border, which was then under Spanish control. Spanish officials detained the entire party, including Pike, accusing them of trespassing into Spanish territory. Pike insisted that they were simply disoriented and unaware they had crossed into Spanish land. They were detained in Santa Fe for several months, as the U.S. military worked to secure their release through negotiations with the Spanish authorities. After being marched across Texas to Natchitoches, Louisiana, Pike and his men were finally freed on July 1, 1807, upon reaching the U.S. border. Pike promptly reported to the U.S. military, providing detailed notes on his observations of Santa Fe. He highlighted vulnerabilities in the Spanish military outposts, shared insights on the city's defenses, and underscored the potential for trade routes with Mexico through the southwest. Was Zebulon Pike simply an attentive spectator, or did he deliberately orchestrate his party's capture to gather intelligence on the Spanish in Santa Fe? There are no concrete records or documents to confirm or refute his intentions, but certain historians have theorized about Pike's hidden agenda. Recall Aaron Burr, Jefferson's vice president, known for fatally shooting Alexander Hamilton in a notorious duel that inspired the popular Broadway musical. Burr was a man driven by political ambition, yet he faced obstacles in his quest for the highest echelons of U.S. government. He harbored grandiose visions of himself as an emperor or king, and when it became evident that he wouldn't ascend to absolute power in the new United States, he turned his aspirations towards establishing his own sovereign nation. Matthew Harris in Zebulon Pike, Thomas Jefferson and the Opening of the American West notes that still resentful over his defeat to Thomas Jefferson in the 1800 presidential election and disheartened by the consequences of his fatal encounter with his rival Alexander Hamilton in a 1804 duel, Aaron Burr saw his future prospects in the Western Territories. To pursue his ambitious objectives, Burr enlisted the support of his confidant, General James Wilkinson, who held the position of Commander-in-Chief of the U.S. Army. Burr and Wilkinson were convinced that with only a modest military force, they could seize a portion of the Louisiana Purchase by force, and thus, they set their plan in motion. Initially, Burr advocated for Wilkinson and persuaded President Thomas Jefferson to appoint Wilkinson as the governor of northern Louisiana. Then, in a departure from the protocol observed during the Lewis and Clark expedition, it was General Wilkinson, not the president, who tasked Zebulon Pike with exploring the precise region Burr had set his sights on for his proposed new nation. This questionable sequence of events has prompted speculation that Pike might have been implicated in the scheme, and that the true objective of his expedition was to scout the area and gather intelligence on the Spanish, as Burr harbored ambitions of expanding his influence into Mexico as well. To bolster the argument, suggesting Zebulon Pike's potential involvement in the Burr conspiracy, historians highlight inconsistencies between Pike's field notes and observations during his expedition and the official report he submitted upon his return. In his journals, Pike depicted the Great Plains as a natural meadow, noting the copious rainfall and abundant wildlife in this expansive grassland. He documented rainfall on 13 of the 37 days it took his party to traverse the Great Plains, and in one entry, Pike noted, "We kept encountering sizable herds of buffalo, elk, and cabri, pronghorn. I'm confident that one hunter could provide for 200 men." Based on his journal entries, Pike perceived the Great Plains as a verdant, fertile landscape teeming with vast herds of buffalo and other wildlife. However, Pike's official report of his expedition findings presented a starkly different portrayal. Instead of describing the Great Plains as a natural meadow, he characterized the region as a desert. However, in this place, a barren and arid soil, lacking moisture and nutrients for 8 months of the year, offers little sustenance for trees. Pike penned. These vast plains of the Western Hemisphere could one day become as famous as the sandy deserts of Africa. After Pike's release from Spanish custody and his return to American territory, he resumed communication with General Wilkinson. In a notable letter from Wilkinson to Pike, the general addressed Pike's observations of the Great Plains, cautioning, "You must be careful, very careful in how you speak about it, as publicizing it might provoke adventurous spirits opposed to our government's interests. If the U.S. government and the general public perceive the Great Plains as fertile, open land suitable for agriculture, settlers would be drawn to the area, and the government would seek to retain control over this valuable resource. Conversely, if the public perceived the region as merely a sandy desert and barren wasteland, they would refrain from settling there, and the United States would not prioritize retaining control over it." If Zebulon Pike deliberately altered his notes to discourage settlers, does this imply collusion with General Wilkinson and Aaron Burr, making him complicit in their schemes against the U.S. government? This remains a speculative theory without substantiated evidence. Zebulon Pike is also associated with a peculiar legend surrounding a mythical lost city of pre-Columbian origin. According to the tale, Pike's journals were confiscated by the Spanish during his imprisonment in Santa Fe. When he was released, not all of his documents were returned to him. Some remained in the possession of Spanish authorities and were not rediscovered until many years later. One passage purportedly recounts Pike's encounter with the lost city of Palor, a fabled city constructed by Europeans who purportedly visited the region long before Christopher Columbus's renowned expedition. This city was rumored to be brimming with riches. The legend became known as Zebulon's Gift, or the Lost City of Palor. Palor remains undiscovered to this day, and the rumored treasure has yet to be unearthed. A seasoned military officer, Zebulon Pike remained in active service following his exploration out west. Rising to the rank of captain in the Army, Pike participated in the Battle of Tippecanoe in 1811 as part of the 4th Infantry Regiment. Following the battle, Pike received another promotion in 1813, this time to the rank of Brigadier General. He was tasked with leading troops in an assault on York, which is present-day Toronto. The United States emerged victorious in the battle. Nevertheless, as Pike and his troops approached the city on April 27, 1813, the withdrawing British deliberately ignited their ammunition magazine to thwart the enemy's capture. The resulting explosion sent rocks and debris flying through the air. Zebulon Pike, along with several fellow soldiers, succumbed to the impact of the projectiles and lost their lives.